How much fresh produce do you think you throw away every year? If you're like the average American household, it's somewhere around 30 to 40% of what you buy. That's not a guess. That's what the research says. You bring home tomatoes, peppers, carrots, apples, squash, and within a week or two, half of it is soft, sprouting, or growing something fuzzy in the back of your fridge. And then you go buy more. I did this for years. I'd spend all summer growing beautiful food in my garden, harvest more than I could eat fresh, and then watch a painful amount of it go to waste because I had no good way to store it long term. Meanwhile, Amish families in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, were putting up their entire harvest every fall and eating from it all winter long. No electricity, no refrigeration, no freezer bags, just a well-designed room underground and a few centuries of knowledge about how to keep food alive through the coldest months. When I finally learned how they do it, I realized I'd been throwing away hundreds of dollars worth of food every single year that I could have been eating in January. Today, I'm going to walk you through exactly how Amish root cellars work and how you can set one up even if you don't have a farm or a big budget. And stick around to the end because I'll share a simple Amish trick for storing apples that keeps them crisp well into spring. I'll tell you the moment this clicked for me. I was visiting an Amish family outside of Lancaster a few years back, and the wife walked me down a set of stone steps into their root cellar. It was October, and that room was already packed. Bushels of potatoes lined up along one wall, carrots buried in boxes of damp sand, onions and garlic hanging in braids from the ceiling, shelves of canned goods, bins of apples, and winter squash stacked on wooden racks like they were on display. She told me they wouldn't buy produce from a store until the following May. Everything they needed was right there in that room. I stood there thinking about the wilted lettuce and soft apples I'd thrown out just that week, and I felt a little foolish. Not because I was doing anything wrong exactly, but because there was a better way sitting right in front of me, and I'd never taken the time to learn it. That's what I want to share with you today. In Amish communities, storing the harvest isn't an afterthought. It's considered the final and most important step in the growing season. This ties directly into their principle of Gelassenheit, which means yielding to the natural order, and their broader ethic of providential stewardship. The belief that everything God provides through the land must be cared for faithfully. Wasting food isn't just impractical to the Amish, it's a failure of responsibility. Now, you don't have to share their theology to appreciate the wisdom in that perspective. Here's what it means in practical terms. The Amish don't grow food and then figure out what to do with it. They plan the storage before they plant the seed. They choose varieties that store well. They time their harvest for maximum shelf life. And they've built systems for keeping food fresh underground that work with the Earth's natural temperature and humidity rather than against it. Modern food science confirms what they've practiced for generations. Controlled cool temperatures and proper humidity can preserve most root vegetables, winter squash, and many fruits for 3 to 6 months or longer without any processing, canning, or electricity. The Earth does the work. You just have to set it up right. Let me show you how. The first step is figuring out where your root cellar is going to be. And I want to be upfront with you. Not everyone can dig a full underground cellar, and that's perfectly fine. The Amish have full walk-in cellars because they build them into hillsides or under their homes, and they've been doing it for generations. But the principles work at any scale, and there are 3 tiers you can choose from depending on your space, budget, and ambition. The first tier is the full underground root cellar. This is the gold standard. If you have a hillside on your property or you're building a new outbuilding, you can dig into the earth and create a room that stays naturally cool year-round. The key depth is below your local frost line, which varies by region. In zones 5 through 7, that's typically 3 to 4 feet down. In zones 3 and 4, it can be 4 to 5 feet or deeper. Once you're below the frost line, the surrounding earth maintains a remarkably stable temperature, roughly 50 to 55 degrees Fahrenheit year-round in most temperate areas. That natural stability is the entire foundation of root cellar storage. Building a full cellar is a real project. You're looking at concrete block or stone walls, a solid ceiling, a dirt or gravel floor for humidity and proper ventilation. It's an investment of time and labor. but it lasts for generations. The Amish cellars I've seen in Lancaster County are 50, 80, some over 100 years old and still working perfectly. The second tier is converting a basement corner. If you have an unfinished basement, especially one with at least one exterior wall that stays cool, you can partition off a small section and turn it into a functioning root cellar. Frame out a room roughly 8 feet by 8 feet in a corner with 2 exterior walls if possible. Insulate the interior walls and ceiling to keep the warm air from the rest of the basement out, but leave the exterior walls uninsulated so the cool earth temperature bleeds through. Add a ventilation pipe 4 inches in diameter is standard, running from low on one wall to high on the opposite wall to create airflow. Hang a thermometer and a hygrometer inside. This setup costs very little if you already have the basement space, and it works surprisingly well in zones 4 through 7 where winter temperatures help keep that corner cold. The third tier is the buried container method, and this is where anyone can get started even with a small property and almost no budget. Take a clean metal garbage can or a large plastic storage bin with a tight fitting lid. Dig a hole in a shaded area of your yard deep enough to bury the container so that the lid sits just above ground level. Pack straw or leaves around the outside for extra insulation. Place your root vegetables inside, layered with damp sand or straw between them, and cover the lid with a thick layer of straw or mulch, then top it with a board or piece of plywood to keep rain and animals out. This won't give you the capacity or the perfect conditions of a full cellar, but it will keep potatoes, carrots, beets, and turnips in good shape for 2 to 3 months through the winter in zones 4 through 7. I used this method for my first 2 winters before I converted part of my basement, and it saved me more produce than I expected. This is the part most people get wrong, and it's the part the Amish get exactly right. A root cellar is not just a cold room, it's a controlled environment defined by 2 numbers, temperature and humidity. Get those 2 numbers in the right range for the right crops, and your food lasts for months. Get them wrong, and you end up with a room full of rot. Here are the targets. Most root vegetables, including potatoes, carrots, beets, turnips, and parsnips, store best at 32 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit with 85 to 95% humidity. That combination keeps them firm, prevents shriveling, and slows the biological processes that cause decay. Winter squash and pumpkins are different. They prefer 50 to 55 degrees Fahrenheit with a lower humidity of 50 to 60%. Too much moisture causes squash to mold. Onions and garlic also want cooler and drier conditions around 32 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit, but with only 60 to 70% humidity. Apples store well at 30 to 35 degrees with 80 to 90% humidity, but they need to be kept separate from other produce for a reason I'll explain in a later step. The Amish manage these different needs by using different zones within the cellar. The floor level, closest to the earth, is the coldest and most humid. That's where root vegetables go, often packed in damp sand inside wooden crates. Higher shelves are warmer and drier, perfect for squash and pumpkins. Onions and garlic hang from the ceiling or sit on upper racks where airflow keeps them dry. If you're working with a basement conversion or a buried container, you have less room to create zones, but you can still prioritize. Store what you have the most of in the best conditions and adjust from there. A dirt or gravel floor is ideal because it naturally releases moisture and helps maintain high humidity. If your space has a concrete floor, set shallow pans of water on the floor to boost humidity and check them weekly to make sure they haven't dried out. A simple hygrometer, which costs a few dollars at any hardware store, tells you exactly where your humidity sits so you can adjust. This third step is one the Amish never skip, and most home gardeners don't even know about. Before any crop goes into the root cellar, it needs to be cured. Curing is the process of letting freshly harvested produce sit in warm, dry, well-ventilated conditions for a period of time so that the skins toughen up and small wounds from harvesting heal over. Without curing, even perfectly stored crops will rot much faster because bacteria and fungi enter through soft skin and nicks. Here's how to cure the major storage crops. Potatoes need to cure for 10 to 14 days at 60 to 65 degrees Fahrenheit in a dark, well well-ventilated space. Do not wash them. Just brush off the loose soil and let them sit. The skin will visibly toughen during this period. After curing, move them to your cellar. Onions should be cured for 2 to 3 weeks in a warm, dry, airy location. Many Amish families lay them out on screens or old window frames in a shed or covered porch. You know they're ready when the necks are completely dry and papery and the outer skins rustle when you handle them. Garlic cures the same way, 2 to 3 weeks in a warm, dry spot with good air circulation. Winter squash and pumpkins need about 10 days of curing at 80 to 85 degrees Fahrenheit. This sounds warm, but it's what hardens the rind and extends storage life dramatically. A sunny porch or a warm room in the house works well for this. After curing, move them to the cooler, drier section of your storage space. The Amish cure everything without exception. It's as much a part of the harvest as picking the crop itself. I skipped this step my first year and I lost about a third of my stored potatoes to soft rot within 6 weeks. Once I started curing properly, those same varieties lasted 4 to 5 months without a problem. It's a simple step, but it makes all the difference. Now, what I'm showing you today is just one piece of a much bigger picture. The Amish don't do anything in isolation. Every technique connects to a whole system, and that system is what makes the difference between a garden that struggles and a garden that practically takes care of itself. I spent years learning how it all fits together, and I've put everything into a step-by-step guide called the 30-Day Amish Pest-Proof Garden Protocol. It's got the complete 5 defense layers, the companion planting charts, the 4-bed crop rotation, all of it laid out day by day. So you're never guessing what to do next. If you want to go deeper than what we can cover in one video, you can click the link right down there in the description below this video. Or if you're watching this on your TV or your computer, just grab your phone, open up the camera and point it at the QR code on screen right now. It'll take you straight to the guide. No searching, no typing anything in. All right, let's keep going. How you pack your produce into the cellar matters just as much as the conditions inside it. The Amish don't just pile everything onto shelves and hope for the best. Every crop gets handled differently, and the way it's packed is designed to maintain the right moisture level around each individual vegetable or fruit while allowing enough airflow to prevent mold. Root vegetables like carrots, beets, turnips, and parsnips store best when they're packed in damp sand. The Amish use wooden crates or old apple boxes lined with a layer of damp sand about 2 inches deep on the bottom. Lay your root vegetables in a single layer on top of the sand, making sure none of them are touching each other. Then cover them with another 2 inches of damp sand. Add another layer of vegetables, another layer of sand, and keep going until the box is full. The sand does 2 things. It maintains consistent humidity right against the skin of each vegetable, and it prevents them from touching, which slows the spread of decay if one piece goes bad. Use clean builder's sand or play sand, dampened so it holds its shape when squeezed but doesn't drip water. One box packed this way will keep carrots crisp and sweet for 4 to 5 months in a proper cellar. I was genuinely shocked the first time I pulled carrots out of sand storage in February and they snapped like they just come out of the ground. Potatoes are simpler. After curing, store them in wooden crates, burlap sacks, or even heavy paper bags in the darkest, coldest part of your cellar. Darkness is critical for potatoes because any light exposure triggers solanine production, which turns them green and makes them bitter and mildly toxic. Don't wash them before storage. Don't stack the containers more than 3 deep so air can circulate, and check them every couple of weeks for any soft spots. One rotting potato can spread to the rest quickly, so pull any bad ones the moment you find them. Onions and garlic need airflow above all else. The Amish braid them by the stems and hang them from ceiling hooks or rafters in the driest part of the cellar. If braiding isn't your thing, you can store them in mesh bags or old pantyhose, 1 onion at a time separated by a knot. The point is that air needs to circulate around every bulb. Never store onions in plastic bags or sealed containers. That traps moisture and causes rot within weeks. Winter squash and pumpkins go on wooden shelves or racks in the warmer, drier section of your cellar, ideally up higher where the air is least humid. Don't let them sit directly on a damp surface. Place a piece of cardboard or a thin board underneath each one. Space them so they aren't touching. Butternut squash, Hubbard squash, and pie pumpkins are among the best keepers and can last 3 to 6 months under the right conditions. Acorn squash is shorter lived, usually 1 to 2 months, so eat those first. Now here's the critical rule the Amish follow that most people learn the hard way. Keep apples separate from everything else. Apples release ethylene gas as they ripen, and ethylene accelerates sprouting in potatoes, softens carrots, and speeds up decay in almost every other stored vegetable. In a traditional Amish cellar, apples get their own shelf on the opposite side of the room from root vegetables, or they go in a separate, smaller space entirely. If you're working with limited room, wrap each apple individually in newspaper before packing them in a crate. This slows the ethylene release and also prevents one bad apple from literally spoiling the bunch. Wrapped and stored at 30 to 35 degrees with good humidity, most apple varieties will hold for 2 to 4 months. Once your cellar is loaded, the work isn't over. The Amish check their storage at least once a week through the winter, and there's a good reason for that. Storage isn't a set it and forget it system. It's a living environment that shifts with outside temperatures, humidity changes, and the natural aging of the produce inside it. Here's your weekly routine. Walk through and check your thermometer and hygrometer first. If the temperature is creeping above 40 degrees, open your ventilation for a few hours on a cold night to bring it back down. If it's dropping close to freezing, close the vents and consider adding insulation around your most freeze-sensitive crops like apples and squash. If humidity is dropping below 80% in the root vegetable section, dampen the sand in your crates or set out fresh pans of water on the floor. If you see condensation dripping from the ceiling, you need more ventilation. Excess moisture without airflow is a recipe for mold. Next, inspect your produce. Look for any soft spots, mold, or off smells. Remove anything that's starting to turn and use it immediately if it's still salvageable, or compost it if it's too far gone. This is the most important habit. One piece of rotting produce releases bacteria and gases that accelerate decay in everything nearby. The Amish are diligent about this because they know from experience that ignoring it for even 2 weeks can cost you a significant portion of your stored food. Also, pay attention to your potatoes for sprouting. If sprouts appear, it usually means there's too much light or the temperature is a bit too warm. Brush off the sprouts and adjust conditions. The potatoes are still perfectly fine to eat as long as they're firm and haven't turned green. Let me give you a realistic picture of what you can expect to store and for how long, because I want to be straight with you. Not everything lasts until spring, and knowing the timelines helps you plan what to eat first and what to save for later. Potatoes are your longest lasting staple, properly cured and stored at 35 to 40 degrees most. Varieties will last 5 to 8 months. Late season varieties like Kennebec and Yukon Gold tend to store longer than early varieties. Carrots packed in damp sand will last 4 to 6 months. Beets, 3 to 5 months. Turnips and parsnips, 3 to 4 months. Onions, if fully cured and kept dry, will last 4 to 6 months depending on variety. Storage varieties like Copra and Patterson are bred specifically for long keeping. Garlic lasts 3 to 5 months under similar conditions. Winter squash varies widely by type. Butternut and Hubbard can go 4 to 6 months. Acorn squash tops out around 6 to 8 weeks. Apples stored individually wrapped at proper temperature last 2 to 4 months, with late season varieties like Fuji, Gold Rush, and Arkansas Black holding the longest. If you plan your storage around these timelines, eating shorter lived crops first and saving potatoes, carrots, and onions for late winter, you can realistically feed your family from your cellar from October well into March or even April. The Amish do exactly this, and their cellars are planned with this rotation in mind. Let me share a few patterns I see in how most of us handle our harvest compared to the Amish approach. I'm guilty of every one of these, so no judgment here. The first pattern is relying entirely on the refrigerator. Your kitchen fridge runs at about 37 to 40 degrees, which is actually a decent temperature for some produce, but the humidity is extremely low, usually around 30 to 40%. That's why carrots go limp and apples shrivel in the fridge within a couple of weeks. A root cellar provides the cold temperature with the high humidity that root vegetables actually need. The second pattern is harvesting everything at once and hoping for the best. The Amish stagger their harvest based on storage readiness. Squash gets picked and cured first, then onions and garlic, then root vegetables and and potatoes last just before the first hard bowl. Frost. Each crop goes into the cellar at its peak storage condition rather than sitting around waiting. The third pattern is skipping the curing step. I've already told you what happened when I skipped it. Most people don't even know curing exists. They pull potatoes out of the ground and put them straight into a box. 3 weeks later, soft rot. The Amish never skip curing because they know from 300 years of experience that it's the difference between food that lasts and food that doesn't. The fourth pattern is storing everything together in the same conditions. Squash next to carrots, apples on top of potatoes, and onions in a sealed bin. Each of these crops has different needs, and mixing them in one undifferentiated space leads to faster spoilage across the board. Even a small amount of separation and organization makes an enormous difference. Now, here's something I learned from an Amish family that I haven't seen in any book or guide, and it changed how I store apples entirely. Before packing their apples into crates for winter storage, they lay a thin bed of dry maple leaves in the bottom of the crate, place a single layer of apples on top, then add another layer of dry maple leaves, then more apples, and so on until the crate is full. Not newspaper, not straw, specifically dry maple leaves. When I asked why maple leaves, the answer was simple and backed up by something I later confirmed. Maple leaves have mild natural antifungal properties. As they sit against the apple skin through the winter, they help suppress the surface molds that cause storage rot. They also cushion the fruit, prevent apples from touching each other directly, and absorb just enough excess moisture to keep the skin dry without letting the apple shrivel. I've been using this method for 3 seasons now, and the difference is noticeable. My apple losses dropped significantly compared to when I used newspaper alone. It's the kind of quiet generational knowledge that doesn't come from a textbook. It comes from 300 years of putting up apples every fall and paying attention to what works. That's what I've learned from Amish families about root cellar storage. Choose or create a space that works for your situation, whether that's a full cellar, a basement corner, or a buried container in the yard. Understand that temperature and humidity are the 2 numbers that control everything. Cure every crop before it goes in. Pack each type of produce according to what it needs. Check the space weekly and pull anything that's turning, and plan your eating order around realistic shelf lives so nothing goes to waste. If you grow even a modest garden, a simple root cellar setup can save you hundreds of dollars a year on groceries and let you eat your own food well into winter. The Amish have been proving that for centuries. There's no reason the rest of us can't do the same. Now, what I've shared with you today is a real piece of the puzzle, but it's still just one piece. If you're tired of fighting the same battles every season, if you want a garden that actually works with you instead of against you, then I'd really encourage you to check out the guide I put together. It's called the 30-Day Amish Pest-Proof Garden Protocol, and it's everything I've learned from my Amish neighbors over the last 3 decades, organized into a simple day-by-day plan you can start this season. It covers the full 5 defense layers to build a garden that defends itself from the soil up. It's got the complete 4-bed crop rotation system that stops disease and pests before they ever get a foothold, and it includes the companion planting field guide so you know exactly what to grow next, to what and why. Now, there are 2 easy ways to grab it. The first way is to click the link in the description right below this video. Just scroll down a little and you'll see it. The second way, if you're watching on a television or computer screen, is to take out your phone. Open up your camera like you're going to take a picture and hold it up to the QR code you see on screen right now. A little link will pop up at the top of your phone screen. Just tap that and it'll bring you right to the guide. No typing, no searching. Either way works. I think it's the best investment you can make in your garden this year.